Welcome to the Skeptic Zone, the podcast from Australia for science and reason.
Hello and welcome to the Skeptic Zone, episode number 221 for the 12th of January 2013. Richard Saunders here with you from Sydney, Australia. Yeah, they predicted a terribly hot day today and it's warm. I'll grant you, looking outside the window, it is warm, but it's not the stinking hot, horrible day they predicted. I think that's good news for firefighters around the state of New South Wales and around the whole country too, which has been having a bit of a rough time lately. Anyway, on today's show, we're going to kick off with Maynard's spooky action, not at a convention this time. Maynard has a chat to our good friend Brian Dunning from Skeptoid.com about one of his very latest episodes of Skeptoid, Giant Worms. Oh yes, if you're listening to this podcast late at night, snuggled in your bed, falling to sleep, maybe some giant worms and other monsters will invade your dreams. Giant Worms with Maynard and Brian Dunning coming up pretty soon. After that, it's Dr Rachie reports once again. Dr Rachie appeared on the national TV show The Project. This time, it was to comment on the anti-vaccination book Melanie's Marvellous Measles. Now, since Dr Rachie went on The Project over the last few days, this book, Melanie's Marvellous Measles, has been getting a lot of very, very bad publicity around the world. It's good to see. And I've put some links up at www.skepticzone.tv for more information. And we'll be discussing this at length during the Think Tank. Yes, to round off the show, it's the Think Tank, the traditional, the good old Think Tank down at our favourite club at the end of the street with Dianne, Dr Rachie, Joe Benhamu, Eran, Segev and myself. And one of the other important matters we'll be discussing in the Think Tank is the news that Meryl Dorey has stepped down from the presidency of the Australian Anti-Vaccination Network. Very interesting news indeed. And as I was preparing to record this little introduction, it's also come to my attention that their magazine Living Wisdom will cease publication. Wow, lots of news on the anti-vaccination front for this week. Don't forget, you people in the Canberra area, there's a free screening of Here Be Dragons on the 20th of January. Head to the Canberra Skeptics website, which is www.canberraskeptics.org.au for more information. And of course, we're looking forward to later this year in November when the Canberra Skeptics will be hosting the Australian Skeptics National Convention. Also, it's not too long now until I get the Skeptic Zone gang together, and even those members of the Skeptic Zone team overseas will chip in, contribute to the script, which I'm just about to finish this week, and the local Skeptic Zone team are looking for a time we can all get together and record a special show very soon, I hope. Looking forward to that. But for now, I'm not going to run downstairs because right here I've got one of my favourite drinks of all time. Good old-fashioned soda water. On this hot day, I'm going to sit here, enjoy this wonderful soda water, and listen to The Skeptic Zone.
Here's Maynard's spooky action at a distance.
When you're talking monsters from around the world, there could be none more scarier than the Mongolian deathworm, which is rumoured to eat people, just comes out of the ground, has a sort of a death ray and goes woo and eats you. Someone who's done some recent investigations into this as part of his Skeptoid program is Brian Dunning. Hi, Brian. How are you?
Hey, Maynard, how are you doing?
Pretty good. Now, look, I am very excited by this because the Mongolian deathworm, a lot of us in Australia think about this a lot because you never know what you've got to do with extra bit of digging south and it'll end up here. Now, now, could you describe the myth around this creature? It's really scary and it's got a bit of a death ray thing going on too, hasn't it?
It does, yes. It's often described as the deadliest of all of the cryptozoology beasts. It pops up out of the sand and it's said to be able to kill people at a distance with either some sort of an electrical shock, sort of like an electric eel, or some say that it squirts venom. But yes, it can kill at a distance, or it kills instantly on touch.
Now, stories of this Mongolian death worm have been around for how long? Hundreds of years? Is this something that the locals genuinely believe in?
It's really hard to learn the whole history of the Mongolian death worm. It's easy to track down how its history became known to the Western literature, but as far as its original genesis, it appears to have been a traditional belief that's very commonly held among Mongolians, at least as far back as the 1920s, and probably much longer. It seems to be a traditional belief that many people in the Mongolian backcountry, in the rural areas of Mongolia, would just seem to take it for granted that this is an actual animal that lives out there.
It's not something where they're just pulling the legs of any foreigners who visit.
No, it doesn't seem like it is. It seems to have been taken very seriously by Western and European parties of paleontologists and geologists who have made scientific expeditions into Mongolia. One of the best known accounts comes from a book in 1926 where an American paleontologist named Roy Chapman Andrews was getting permits to get his Mongolian expedition going. So he was meeting with Mongolian government officials, and they asked him, hey, while you're out there, can you collect one of these things for us? And they were quite serious about it.
And what evidence is there? Because I know you're one of these boring guys who seek the evidence. What evidence is there? Has anyone caught one, seen one, photographed one, even heard the noises of one?
Nothing. Nobody has ever seen photographed or had a specimen of one. There's never been any evidence of one. There's even when you would speak to Mongolians, these parties of scientists who would go there, when they would speak to Mongolians, they would almost always say, my brother saw one, or the cousin of my wife's mother-in-law saw one. Very few people would claim to have seen one themselves, but everyone seems to believe that the person next door has actually seen one.
Now, is this some native snake or something that could have been misidentified?
I don't think so. There are a number of Western cryptozoologists who study these mysterious animals that some believe exist, have tried to classify it. They've looked at similar species of snakes, species of worms, species of eels, and none of them are a plausible match, despite these well-intentioned efforts to try and find some actual taxonomy for this creature. It's almost certainly not a real animal.
So why does it still persist? Is it just an area of the world where superstition can take hold very easily and won't let go?
Certainly within Mongolia, it's not going to be any different from many other ancient places in the world and places where people have deep-rooted suspicions, traditions. That's not uncommon at all. Where the Mongolian deathworm has gained a lot of traction has been in these recent years, since the early 1990s, when it became largely known to the Western cryptozoology literature, and its ability to kill at a touch has made it really exciting as far as cryptids go. Nobody claims to have been killed by a Bigfoot or the Loch Ness Monster, but this little thing has apparently killed everyone who's seen it. I think that's what makes it so intriguing and interesting.
So do you think people will persist in looking for it, even though there is a distinct lack of evidence?
Yes, absolutely. There is not a cryptid in the world that doesn't have a dedicated base of supporters who go and search for it. You may have heard last year there was a party of American young Christian men who raised a lot of money and took an expedition to Africa to seek dinosaurs, believing that if they found dinosaurs, it would prove the young Earth theory and that the Bible was literally true. People are actually out there spending real money tracking down animals that there's no plausible likelihood of their existence.
Now, is this your favorite one? I know you've looked at a couple of different cryptozoological allegations over the years. The Loch Ness Monster is everyone's favorite. Bigfoot, of course, is up there. But the Mongolian deathworm, is there anything weirder than that you've heard of?
Weirder than that. The weirdness. I'm not sure how you quantify weirdness on the cryptozoology scale. It's everywhere.
But
everything
Brian,
from creatures that are what?
But we do discover new creatures every year. There's new creatures that we thought weren't around or are new or extinct every year. So there is a possibility that these things are somewhere.
Well, not really the way that's commonly stated. It's why not search for these animals since scientists do discover new species all the time. Scientists who actually go out into the field collecting insects and specifically looking for something that they have a good idea that it actually exists, or more likely they're not searching for something, they just come upon something. That's how new species are found. We've never had, in the whole history of science, we've never had a new species be discovered by cryptozoologists, or something that is an unexplained animal that's rumored to exist, and we have non-scientific people going out into the field and encountering it. That's never happened once. So no, I don't expect that the cryptozoology community is going to find a Mongolian deathworm or a Bigfoot or a Yowie or what have you, drop bears, etc.
So you're suggesting that we leave the science to people like biologists?
Well, leaving the science to the biologists certainly, but leaving the legend and the interesting, fun storytelling parts to the people who go out and search for cryptids and things like that. That's where the value of these animals are. It's not like we're going to draw some real useful science out of the story of the Mongolian deathworm. We are going to draw some really interesting legends, some interesting personalities, some interesting sociology about how and why the belief exists. That's the value of these stories. It's wasting the story to look for science in it because it's not that type of a story.
Now, Brian, last year was a big year for Bigfoot hunting in the US, with the show Searching for Bigfoot. But even cryptozoologists were a little bit embarrassed by that effort, weren't they?
I think anyone who owns a television was a little bit embarrassed by that effort. You see, that's exactly what I'm talking about. They were trying to express it as if this is a literal animal that actually exists, and of course it's not. You're always going to look like a loser if you try and go out, take your camera out in the woods and say, I'm going to film a Bigfoot. Well, there are no Bigfoots. It's like taking a camera into a haunted house and hoping to get a picture of a ghost. Your film is going to be pretty boring, and that's what happened to we joked and we called the TV show Not Finding Bigfoot.
and of course there was the ufology show, Chasing UFOs, which is a little bit similar. There was a lot of running, jumping, standing still, mainly with night vision cameras, but even people who are into the field of UFO investigation found that show embarrassing because they were just making a TV show running, jumping, and standing around the dark.
Yeah, it's a poorly conceived idea for a television show to actually take your camera out and go and look for something that's mythological. There are much better ways to approach the subject. If I were going to make a documentary about the Mongolian deathworm, I would not take a camera out to Mongolia and go poking through the sand with a stick because that's going to be a very boring video. You have to look for where the real value in these stories is, and it's in the history, it's in the legend, it's in the personalities and the sociology.
And how many discussions have you had with people at conferences about this that are passionate about this, and it's very difficult for you to get across to them that probably this is a myth and not a real thing? How do you, when you encounter a person that passionate?
Yeah, I've realized long ago that trying to change their mind it's not only a losing proposition, it's not the best way to take advantage of the situation. I would rather learn what I can about this legend from that person. So I've given up trying to have an argument with people who have a strange belief. Instead, I want to learn more about the strange belief and how and why it exists and what we can learn from it and how it can actually serve us instead of embarrass us, as you say.
Brian Dunning from Skeptoid.com, thanks a lot. And look, if you do find any cryptoids or any strange animals, let us know first.
Well, I'll run away from it, and then if I survive, I'll let you know.
See you later, Brian.
See you, Maynard.
Skeptic Zone listeners. Do you know what to do in August? Come to Stockholm, Sweden and meet astronaut Christer Fuglesang, activist Hayley Stevens, stats guru Hans Rosling, undercover health journalist Anna Bessén, and many more at the 15th European Skeptics Congress. Friday the 23rd to Sunday the 25th of August in Stockholm, Sweden.
The 15th European Skeptics Congress. www.euroskepticscon.org.
www.euroskepticscon.org.
Now it's time for Dr. Rachie Reports with Dr. Rachael Dunlop.
Doctors say an anti-vaccination book promoting the marvellous health benefits of measles is misleading and shouldn't be for sale. Despite evidence measles can kill and cause brain damage, the children's book, which is now widely available online, claims the disease is a good thing to have. And Dr. Rachel Dunlop is a medical expert. Rachel, is this a new low for the anti-vaccination movement targeting kids like this?
Hi, Carrie. Well, nothing surprises me much anymore with the anti-vax movement, and it seems nothing is too low for them. But, this is pretty insidious that it's actually targeting children instead of parents in this case, and indeed encouraging kids to get infected with measles, which is a highly infectious and sometimes a very, very serious disease.
In the book, the child Tina asks if she can go over and catch the measles from Melanie, and her mother says, that sounds like a great idea, suggesting some carrot juice and melon might help Melanie recover. What do you say to that? What would you say to the author of this book?
Well, I would suggest that the author go and ask anybody who's had measles, and I'm pretty sure they won't say that they had a marvellous experience. You could ask any one of the 140,000 people that die across the world every year, except that they're probably not able to answer anymore, but I'm pretty sure they'd say they didn't have a marvellous experience. We're talking about a disease that in 30% of cases there are complications involved. In 1 in 10 of those instances, kids get hospitalised with pneumonia. They can end up with ear infections that can result in deafness. They can end up with swelling of the brain, and in some very rare cases they can end up with a fatal degenerative disorder years after the original infection. So this is not something that melon and juice will ward off, and viruses don't care if you've got melons and juice. They are not afraid of that.
Rachel, is it fair to say there's more reality in Harry Potter than there is in Melanie's marvellous measles, or whatever it's called?
Yeah, well, what is the next thing we're going to have? Fantastic polio or a wonderful, meningitis? This is ridiculous and it's incredibly irresponsible.
Well, hopefully anyone that's read the book or plans to read the book has listened to you here tonight, Rachel. Thanks for your wise words.
Thanks, Harry.
Dr. Rachel Dunlop is one of Australia's foremost media commentators in matters concerning so-called alternative medicine. She has appeared on national radio and national television. Dr. Rachie is available for interviews, and you can contact her at Rachael@skepticzone.tv.
Jeg er Marit, og jeg er Kristin, og vi vil tipse deg som norsk lytter av Skeptic Zone om skeptikermiljøet i Norge. Det finnes norske blogger og pubtreff og podcast, og foreningen Skepsis driver med slikt som disse du hører på nå. Sentralt er skepsis.no, og her publiseres det dyptgående artikler, en kalender over aktiviteter og lenker til nyttige ressurser. Skepsis-bloggen oppdateres jevnlig, og det diskuteres heftig på forumet, så stikk innom og delta du også. Skepsis.no.
Join us now for Drinking Skeptically in the Think Tank.
You can't say that on an international podcast. No, you can't.
However, I don't know what you were saying and what's better or where it is, but I would like to welcome you to the Think Tank. Dianne, hello!
Hello, how are you?
And cheers to everybody.
Cheers.
It's been a long time. Cheers. And, of course, a big welcome to Dr. Rachie. Hi, Dr. Rachie.
Hi, Richard. How are you?
I'm fine, and I notice you've got, like me, you have a glass of champagne in your hand, and we'll explain that in a minute.
Yes, there's a reason for that, not just because we're drinking at the drunk tank, whatever it's called.
We are back at the think tank. Eran Segev. Hello, Eran.
Hello, Richard. How are you doing?
I'm well. Good to see you again. And Joe Benhamu. Hello, Joe.
Hi, Richard.
You're looking particularly smug tonight.
I am feeling rather smug.
Cheers again. It's so nice to be back in our favourite club down the end of the street. There was a bus announcement earlier, but I didn't...
Oh, no.
Yeah, there was. Maybe we'll...
Forgot about bus announcements.
Yes, it's been a long time. It's been a long time indeed. It's been a big news day in the old skeptical realms, one might say, and we've got quite a few topics to get through because it's just that sort of happening thing. I don't know where we should start, but I guess we should start with some interesting news. Dr Rachie.
Well, I don't really know what to say. I mean, this hasn't been confirmed yet, but we were just sitting here earlier, 20 minutes ago, chatting, having some food, and checked to internets, as we're prone to do quite often, and there was an article that came out today, an Australian doctor.
Hey! Sorry. Okay.
Yeah, well, we haven't had confirmation of this yet, but according to an article published today in Australian Doctor magazine, Meryl Dorey has resigned as the president of the Australian Vaccination Network.
You look shocked, Dianne. Shouldn't that be derp, derp, derp? Wow, how about that? And who's taken her place?
Well, the guy who's taken her place, his name is Greg Beattie, and he's been recently doing a lot of seminars with Meryl when she was doing a lot of seminars. She hasn't done any for a while. He's also written a book. Joe, what's it called?
I can't remember.
It's a book. It's an anti-vax book.
Okay.
No, I know. Sure. But he also is known because I believe he sued the Human Rights Commission in Australia a number of years ago for a childcare centre excluding his children, and he lost that case. But in any case, if this is true, and as I said, we haven't had confirmation that it is true, it's not a very good thing for the AVN. Because one of the appeals that Meryl had as the president, and as Eran said earlier, I mean, you can say what you like about Meryl Dorey, but one of the things that Eran was mentioning before, and he's absolutely right, is that she has a great appeal to parents and to the public because she's very charismatic. She's a mother, so she has the appeal of, I had a son who had a vaccine reaction, so people can... relate to her, they can empathise with her, they can sympathise with her.
Soundbites for the media, huh?
Yeah, I mean, she's very, very good with courting the media and with managing to get her point across quite well. So she's attractive to the media. The guy, Greg Beattie, who has allegedly taken over, although this is very, as I say, very new.
Oh, yeah.
He was on a television story last night and he doesn't come across nearly as well as Meryl. So in terms of their media presence, I think this is a blow for them because Meryl had that going for her, absolutely, and she had it down pat, and she was very, very good at the way she presented. Absolutely, yeah. What do you think, Joe?
Joe's lost for words, ladies and gentlemen. She's shocked.
Serious.
I think she's shocked more than anything else. Oh, you've missed that laugh, I know.
By surprise.
Again, eh?
Look, I think as you said, the main thing is she's been sort of the figurehead for the organisation for so long, and he's taking over at a time when, you know,
they're in all sorts of strife.
Oh, they're in all sorts of strife for so many different reasons, and their position in the media is, I mean, you very rarely hear them mentioned in the media these days without, you know, negativity following.
Compared to what it was, it's been shot to pieces.
Absolutely. And I think very much also that what Meryl has always played into is that whole, you know, the mother with the vaccine damaged child and all those claims. So I just think that he's not going to be able to. And
the old both sides of the story and all that sort of stuff.
I think that, but I think from I think Eran would agree. He's looking. Did you want to say something? You're looking quite anxious there.
No.
Okay. Because I think that's the really important thing is that the mummy warriors can relate to another woman who has gone through something similar to them. And just obviously, a father can also empathise with that, but it's a different thing, I think, from a woman.
It's very much. It's a particular dynamic that or I don't know if dynamic's the right word, but it's a particular.
It's now 8 p.m.
Oh, gosh!
Okay, definitely no need to edit that.
Right here.
What was I saying? I lost.
Can I just ask a question?
Yeah.
So, Meryl Dorey spent quite a bit of time online and managing and being the president of the AVN. What's Warren Beatty? Not Warren Beatty.
Greg Beatty.
What does he do? Can he spend as much time? Does he work, or do you know what he does?
I have no idea. I mean, he has written two anti-vax books, and he did, at the last minute, drop everything and go on one of Meryl's recent tours when she was doing seminars. But I don't know what he does.
I'm actually willing to bet that, first of all, she's not going anywhere. He's going to be the president, but you might remember that she actually said she was resigning, stepping down as president, and she became the spokesperson.
I remember.
A while back.
Yeah. 2010.
Yeah, before the trial,
Yeah.
before she sued the HCCC. Then she said she wasn't the president, and she was the president again, and so I'm willing to bet that she will continue to be the spokesperson, because without her as the spokesperson, without her as the face of the AVN, they'll be gone.
I have something to say about that, because last night there was a big story on a current affair, and they did quite a long story on the AVN, and she was not in that story, Eran. It was Greg Beatty. Now, you know how media hungry she is, and you know how narcissistic she is when it comes to getting attention. She'd passed up that opportunity, apparently.
Eran's so shocked he dropped his glass.
And then the way that we got this news just earlier tonight was that he was quoted in an article as the president of the AVN. So that, to me, doesn't differentiate between spokesperson and president. He's the one now, in the last week, who's been speaking and the mouthpiece for the AVN.
Have any formal emails been sent out by the AVN of the change of the...
Well, it's so new. Yeah. Honestly, this is just before we started recording. This news came to our attention.
I mean, look, I have to say though that a number of us have been monitoring the activity that's been happening in the organisation for the last few months, maybe 6 months. And we have been suspicious that something is going on, purely from the perspective of they've let a lot of things lapse. Their website is hacked to the bejesus. Yeah. A lot of the pages are broken. They've been neglecting their Facebook page. They haven't sent out any action alerts like they used to.
And have they been publishing a magazine?
No, they haven't been publishing a magazine. But they haven't even been blogging very much. They've actually been republishing blog posts from other nut jobs, like the NVIC and stuff, so they're not even very...
Is that the equivalent of Fruit Loops?
I think it is the equivalent of Fruit Loops.
It sounds like breakfast cereal. Have some Fruit Loops with your nut jobs.
Their activity has dropped off significantly in the last few months, and so we have seen Greg Beatty coming up in the ranks a little bit, and I think they've been trying to sort of... My opinion is that she's been grooming him for a little while, so I'm not actually that surprised. But the fact that she is now shying away from media attention, to me, is very suspicious, because she loves the media.
That is actually very telling. I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah.
But, because, when a current affair plays in Australia, I'm still at work. It's around lunchtime for me.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Well, that's the interesting breaking news tonight, folks. Tonight, and we're recording this on a Thursday night. Thursday, the what is it? The 10th. Thursday, the 10th. Now, in the same vein, and of course, folks, you would have heard Dr. Rachie's latest appearance on national television. Well done, Dr. Rachie, on the project.
Thank you. I had really good feedback about that. I got a phone call from a really scary guy from The Who.
Oh.
Scary. Well,
a doctor from The Who?
A professor who's on a committee to do with vaccination with the World Health Organization, and I went, hello. Who are you?
You're talking about Peter Frampton.
I was going to say.
However, the topic, of course, as listeners will remember, because they've just heard it, was this wonderfully interesting book, and I use the term wonderful in a bizarre context, Melanie's Marvellous Measles.
Retract that statement, Richard.
I might have to do that. Now, listeners may well remember that maybe even up to a year ago, we did mention this book on the Think Tank, Melanie's Marvellous Measles, and we had a few jokes about it. But before you, Joe, and Eran and Dr. Rachie turned up here tonight at the Think Tank, I was having a chat to Dianne, and we spent a good half an hour coming up with some alternatives. Some alternatives to Melanie's Marvellous Measles. Now, people out there might wish to publish another book or another series. In the series, Dianne, even. And if I may, here's what Dianne and
I think before you actually launch into it, it's important to give a bit of context to people who may not be familiar with this, which is that Melanie's Marvellous Measles is a anti-vaccination book written specifically for children.
That's right. But we've come up with some other titles, specifically for children, of course. And here are some of the other titles that Dianne and I dreamt up over our Chinese dinner. Woo-hoo. It was over our Chinese dinner. Instead of Melanie's Marvellous Measles, why not Henry's Happy Hepatitis, Dorothy's Delightful Diphtheria, Chloe's Clever Chlamydia, oh dear. Matthew's Magical Melanoma, Penelope's Precious Pertussis, Gemma's Glorious Gangrene, Meryl's Mendacious Myxomatosis, Peter's Priceless Pox, Nora's Nice Pneumonia, Cara's Colossal Cancer, Lenny's Luxurious Leukemia, Henry's Helpful Herpes, Warren's Wonderful Warts, there's more folks, Paula's Pleasant Polio, Ralph's Ravishing Rabies, Terry's Tremendous Tumour, Reuben's Rambunctious Rubella, Michael's Magnificent Mumps, Phil's Fantastic Flu, Olga's Outstanding Ulcers, Sarah's Sumptuous Syphilis, Pippa's Persistent Plague, Cedric's Sizzling... What?
Psoriasis.
Thank you. Gloria's Great Gonorrhea, Ben's Brilliant Botulism, Ernie's Excellent Ebola, Gordon's Grandiose Glandular Fever, Ted's Titanic Tetanus, Eric's Exceptional Emphysema, Wendy's Wondrous Worms, Maria's Majestic Meningitis, Susie's Sensational Scabies, Tony's Terrific TB, Colin's Kind Cholera, Fred's Funny Fungus, Lisa's Likeable Lice, and Hannah's Heroic Hemorrhoids.
I think you should put that to music, Richard.
I actually think that's just page 17 of the Merck Guide, isn't it?
So that took a little bit of time, but we had a good time doing that. But it's just as stupid, as absolutely mind-bogglingly stupid as Melanie's Marvellous Measles. What a list, but Rachie, I don't think that Dianne and I had an original idea.
Well, no. There is already a website out there that's selling 3 books very similar to yours, Richard. Yes. It's called Blissful Blight Books. And the titles so far, it's actually quite not as many titles as you have done, not as thorough, but there's Mark's Magnificent Meningitis.
Oh, yes.
There is Paul's Pleasant Polio. Mm-hmm. And there is Susie's Sensational Smallpox.
Along the same lines, I think, that we were thinking of, Dianne.
Now, I'll just give you the sort of summary of what Paul's Pleasant Polio is about. And the cover is a photo of a young boy inside an iron lung. And it's got a little butterfly in the corner, very similar to Melanie's Marvellous Measles. And it's written by Eran Lung.
Oh, very good.
And it says, when Paul got a stiff back and had trouble bending his neck, he hoped and dreamed that it would be polio. Then his body was naughty and stopped his lungs from breathing. Luckily, he got to spend lots of time in an iron lung, a huge machine that helps him breathe by applying a vacuum to his entire lower body. When his friends come over, they all gather round the iron lung to play astronauts, and Paul gets to be Michael Collins while his friends pretend to be Neil and Buzz. Isn't that delightful?
Isn't that delightful?
So that website is called Blissful Blight Books.
Worth a visit.
You should put a link from...
I think I'll definitely put a link from the show notes. Now, Joe, this story's really taken off. Dr. Rachie's report on the project is just an example, but there are certainly many more.
Look, I'll give you a bit of background. The book was actually published about a year ago and got a bit of attention from people who are very involved in dealing with the anti-vaccination problem. But it seems that the author of the book, Stephanie Messenger, has found a way to republish it through it's a bit of a strange I'm not that familiar with the publishing world, but the new publisher is a group by the name of Trafford Publishing, and I think they're based in either in the US or the UK. I can't remember.
Well, Trafford is just outside Manchester.
Yeah, well, that's why I was pretty sure it was in the UK. But
one of my ancestors.
Either way, I don't get the impression that there's been much editorial oversight, because I think that the publishing has come about really through just the purchase of a publishing package that they seem to offer, and with that comes marketing and all sorts of stuff. So an SAVN member noticed that the book was actually now being sold on Amazon, Book Depository, Book World, Angus and Robertson, Booktopia, and the Nile, and I think there are a couple of others. And so when this was brought to our attention, we started a bit of a mini Twitter campaign, really, first of all, alerting these online booksellers of what it is that they were actually stocking on their virtual shelves, and also just trying to bring the attention of the general public to the fact that this very dangerous book was freely available and being sold and marketed to kids. So this was not last Saturday, but I think the Saturday before, we alerted Amazon, Book Depository, and all of the others that we could access through Twitter of what the book was about, and that it was really concerning that they were stocking a book which was basically telling kids that they should try and contract deadly childhood diseases. Pleasingly, we got an immediate response from Booktopia, who, the minute they found out what the book was actually about and what they were stocking, they took it off their shelves, which I have to congratulate them for behaving as an ethical bookseller and deciding not to hold it. Every other publisher, however, has been completely silent on the issue, except for one, the Nile. That's not true. Book Depository and the Nile. Book Depository responded to me basically claiming that we were trying to impinge on free speech and that we were asking for the book to be banned. And our response to Book Depository and also the Nile, who today also came back with the same argument that the book, we were asking for the book to be banned and that really it was not up to them to decide what people could and couldn't buy. Our response to them is, where do you draw the line? So they're saying that they're quite happy to stock a book that is telling children that it's a good idea for them to contract these diseases, but would they stock a book on making bombs, or would they stock other dangerous literature? So I'd like to know where they draw the line.
The danger is to stray into Godwin's law.
Well, they don't stock books on voluntary euthanasia.
No, exactly.
So you can't buy a book and then kill yourself if you want to, but it's okay for you to buy a book to give your kids a disease that will potentially kill them.
Exactly.
I mean, there's no logic in that.
There's absolutely no logic. I think it's really one of those sort of sticking their head in the sand because they somehow think maybe it'll set a precedent or whatever. But I think that really it actually highlights a very important issue about the nature of the publishing industry and how things have changed now in terms of what people can actually get out there and distribute. And, I think that I know there are a lot of smaller booksellers that really take an ethical stance when it comes to publishing, like Embiggen Books, for example, who I know, put a lot of care and detail into what they publish. Now, at this point, we haven't heard anything back from Amazon, nothing further from Book Depository or Angus and Robertson. I've sent letters to all of them and I haven't heard responses from them. And I think, it's always a little bit nerve-wracking when you take on these issues because you sometimes worry, we've had people say, do you think you've not created a bit of a Streisand effect by, getting publicity for the book? But I think that really with something like this, and this is something I've always felt quite strongly about, the majority of parents, I think do vaccinate their kids, and the majority of parents do actually look at this kind of stuff and see how dangerous it is. But I'm not worried about those majority who will make the right decision for their kids. I'm worried about that minority who will make a decision that will actually end up harming their own child or harming someone else's child. And that small minority... And it's that small minority who are jumping up and down with glee at the fact that this book is out there and think it's absolutely wonderful. And I think that these booksellers really need to take a good, long, hard look at what they're putting on their shelves and behaving?
I think it's the right thing that light is being shed on this issue.
Pleasingly, I have to say, huge thank you to Tori Shepherd from news.com.au who broke the story on Tuesday. So she put a great article in their paper on Tuesday, and it's since been picked up by a number of news outlets. I think it's been on CNN and Salon.com and the Daily Telegraph in the UK. Telegraph.co.uk. Yeah, Telegraph.co.uk. But I think that it was actually picked up there by, some of the UK skeptics and various other people.
Yeah, bloggers.
But here in Australia, it's getting a lot of media attention. So thank you, Tori. We're really pleased that that's happened.
I think it brings up an interesting discussion that you alluded to earlier, Joe, and I think maybe we should have that discussion because, as you mentioned, the Streisand effect, and is it actually worse to get this out there? And we deal with this all the time, trying to counteract anti-vaccine material, because I'm often have this prickly question of, well, just don't give them oxygen. Yeah. It's better if you just don't give them oxygen. But the trouble is, this book was picked up by a major publisher, and it's available on Amazon, and it's available across all Amazons, and it's going to get seen by a lot of people. And so once it gets that sort of exposure, I think it's irresponsible for us to not do something about it, because it's already out there. Yeah. And sometimes that can result in a spike in interest and a spike in sales. In the 24-hour media cycle that we have now, that will go down quite quickly. But if we just let this stuff fizzle out without counteracting it or without trying to rebut it, then people only remember that spike. They don't remember that there were other people saying this is bad. So it puts us in a difficult position.
Well, I'm looking at the list here on this piece of paper of all the references it's had, all the media coverage, including local radio here in Sydney and, as you were saying before, various international websites. And universally, they've been condemning that.
Look, I have to say one of the things I didn't mention was that the attitude of the booksellers, such as Book Depository, was that people can go on and put reviews online, and that the reviews will really dictate people's views, because people will go on and they'll review the book and they'll see the reviews, and people will therefore respond to that. I don't agree with that. I don't think that's the case, especially these days with the way things tend to work. Unfortunately, is that, those of us who are very passionate about dealing with the anti-vaccination issue, the minute something like this happens, we will all crowd onto a website and leave our responses and challenge the anti-vaccination arguments, and the anti-vaxxers will jump on and do the same thing. So the average person out there, I think, will be a little bit kind of overwhelmed by a whole lot of people all madly kind of, battling each other over these issues. They're not really wanting to kind of get involved too much in that themselves. I think most people just want to, go in, read an article, walk away, or make their purchase and so on.
I guess it comes back to the whole point about suppression of free speech and what is free speech, and the whole idea that yelling fire in a crowded theatre is not acceptable. You can get arrested for doing that. Well, isn't that a suppression of my free speech? Why can't I go into a theatre and say that? Well, I don't see the difference with this. I don't see why this should be allowed because publishers are worried about hurting people's feelings. I mean, the thing is, this book will still be available. You'll still be able to buy it. For example, you can buy it through the AVN website. However, I wouldn't recommend you go there because the site is so hacked that you'll probably end up with flights to the Bahamas on your credit card before the day is out. But it's not like this is trying to stop the book being available. It's just, I
think that's the point I'm trying to make as well, is that we're not talking about banning the book. We're talking about a business making an ethical decision about what it chooses to have on its shelves. And that is something that is a business decision. That is something a business can make a decision about.
That happens all the time. I mean, that happens with pharmacies in this country. Some pharmacists won't sell you the emergency contraceptive pill because that's against their beliefs.
Some pharmacies, although far too few, won't sell homeopathy because they'd be ripping you off.
Well, I know. And nobody's saying, well, that's suppressing my ability to get homeopathy. You just go down the road to the next place.
Yeah, some pharmacies will sell you e-candles.
Well, exactly, but this is not an issue of suppressing freedom of speech and about burning books. And, someone brought this up somewhere on a thread today that I saw that, well, you can now buy Mein Kampf through Amazon, so why shouldn't you be able to buy this book? And it's like, Okay, come on.
I knew Godwin's Law would come into
This
this
is stretching it a little bit far. I mean, the reason why you can buy Mein Kampf now is for historical purposes, so we can understand the history of Germany and the Third Reich.
As my understanding is, I seem to remember that book
Well, it's banned
from high school.
It's banned in Germany.
It's banned in Germany.
Completely.
Oh, okay.
But it was available in bookstores.
But for historical...
For historical...
It's a historical document. Yes, exactly. Yeah.
So it's...
But look, I have to say, we do have one thing on our side.
Yes.
It's a terrible book.
You're absolutely right, Joe.
Bloody awful. The illustrations are just terrible. It's an absolute hack job. I mean, it's basically...
And confused messages, one say.
Confused messages.
Where's that review of the book? It's on... There's a great review of the book.
Skeptic in the UK.
Yeah, they did a review of the book. It's wonderful. Good review. Yeah. Oh, Rachel, I understand it's your mum's birthday.
It is my mum's birthday.
Hey, that's fantastic.
And I have to give a shout out to my boyfriend as well, because he reminded me.
Now, I know your mum. She's a wonderful character. What a sense of humour.
Yeah, she's a bit crazy. So she got some flowers today sent from her spider that lives in her bathroom, which she calls Tamara, which somehow knew it was her birthday and sent her some lilies. So that's how crazy she is. But yeah, happy birthday, Ma.
Happy birthday, Ma.
Happy birthday, Rachel's Ma.
Her name's Minnie, by the way.
Minnie
and Moose.
Minnie and Moose. Yeah.
It's your dad, of course.
Yeah.
Now, I know your dad. He's a really well-respected man, and he's got the Order of Australia, of course.
He has got an Order of Australia. But I think our international friends would be probably aware that at the moment we're experiencing some rather elevated temperatures in this country. Yes. And in fact, the Weather Bureau had to change the colours on the scale for the heat recently, where the hottest used to be bright red or deep red, and they had to change it to purple to indicate 50-plus degrees.
New temperatures.
New temperatures, yeah. And so we're experiencing some pretty bad bushfires, as we normally do at this time of the year. And both my parents work for the Volunteer Fire Service, and my dad's recently been promoted to the Chief Commander or something. So he has to delegate where the appliances go, and the appliances being the fire engines. Yeah. But you don't call them fire engines. You have to...
And where did the egg beaters go? That's what we want to know.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, maybe our international friends don't realise this, but most of the people that work on the bushfires in this country are volunteers.
Yeah, amazing, absolutely amazing.
I think it's the largest volunteer organisation in the world.
Really?
Is it?
Yeah.
It wouldn't be surprising. Especially in the last few days. It's been horrendous.
Yeah, so, kudos to our firefighters because...
Cheers to them.
Yeah, cheers to them. And hopefully they won't
have
any more problems this summer, but I dare say they probably will, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Stupid people stop lighting fires.
Please do, yes. Now, of course, it's very exciting. We're in the middle of Maynard's wonderful reports coming back from the National Convention held in Melbourne a few months ago, which was... What a great convention that was. And we're so excited that the next convention is going to be in Canberra, their nation's capital. I was only speaking to the Canberra Skeptics today, very early days yet in planning, but they're very excited. I think it's going to be a wonderful convention. All I can say is watch this space. More information as the months go by about the next Australian Skeptics Convention. If you miss the Melbourne Convention, don't miss the Canberra Convention. It's going to be wonderful. Lots of special guests. We can't wait for that. But Joe, you've got information about something that's coming up even before then.
Yeah, on my birthday, actually.
No. 21.
Yes, absolutely. Forever. So on the 9th of February this year, we're going to be having a repeat of last year's fabulous Surf Coast Summer Skeptic Camp, which for those of you who want to make your way down to the lovely Great Ocean Road in Victoria, Mick
Isn't
Vag...
that a gorgeous area?
It is beautiful.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah, I'm going to make a little holiday out of it, I think. So Mick Vag is organising another Surf Coast Summer Skeptic Camp. It's just a one-day... fairly, short day event. So if you want to just pop down, Skeptic Camp, if you don't know, is completely free. You can register online if you just Google Surf Coast Summer Skeptic Camp, and it should be a lovely day.
What was that date again?
That would be Saturday the 9th of February.
There you go. Excellent news. And speaking of things that you can look at on the internet, Joe, there's very exciting news about the Australian Skeptics Facebook.
Yes, it's been a long time coming. We've been a little bit tardy to the party, as they say. So we finally got ourselves a formal Facebook page for Australian Skeptics Inc. You can find it on the internet. Unsurprisingly. So, yes, no, just go to Facebook, and if you're already a member of the Facebook group, there's a link in the Facebook group. Otherwise, just look up Australian Skeptics in Facebook and come and like the page. It'll be a really good place to find out what's going on. We'll be keeping people up to date with things. The Facebook group is probably going to be still going for, it's probably still going to be going because it's a great place for people to have a chat. So there you go.
Check it out, folks. There'll be a link in the show notes, of course. And we're going to wrap it up in a minute. Eran's got something to tell us with that wonderful music in the background. I don't know.
I know it has been rather nice. It reminds me of Maynard, actually, this music.
I was just about to mention Maynard. It's we're very sorry Maynard can't be with us tonight, but he's certainly in our thoughts, and we thank him for his outstanding effort to the Skeptic Zone. Really, it's just extraordinary. And his interview with Brian Dunning on today's show was really good. So a big shout out to our dear friend Maynard. Can't wait to see him again soon.
I love Maynard so much.
I know.
Well, the thing that's funny though is that I was such a huge fan of his in the 90s, and then I by accident found out that he was sort of a fan of skepticism, and I went and interviewed him, and I was so squeaky. It was like,
I remember when you first said that, Maynard was coming along to the Skeptic Zone, and I'm like, that Maynard?
The first time I met him was here at this club, and I walked in, and then he was standing there, and I thought to myself, that's Maynard. That's Maynard.
I think he came to the Crown. He came to the...
You might be right, but the first time I saw him was like, oh, that really is Maynard. It was just incredible. I still feel that way sometimes when I see him. It's like, oh yeah, that's Maynard. That's ridiculous.
Anyway,
Eran.
Yeah, so the Razzies were announced, I believe it was yesterday, and the Razzies are so much better than the Oscars, aren't they?
It's interesting. By the time this show goes out, everybody will know about the Oscars.
Of course. So the Razzies are the Golden Raspberry Awards. They'll be handed out on February 23rd. For some reason, they're a little bit like the Ben Spoon. People don't show up to get the award. I'm not going to go into lots of detail. There's a couple of things I want to mention. First of all, a few movies star there, like the names come up again and again. One of them is That's My Boy with Adam Sandler.
You mean Adam Sandler's up for a Razzie?
Yeah, who would have thought? But he also won. There is an organization called the Alliance of Women Film Journalists, and they've given him the misogyny. They've put the movie into the Misogyny Hall of Shame. Who would have thought? Again, Adam Sandler. But what I really liked was the fact that the Twilight Saga Breaking Dawn Part 2 features in every single category, in some categories twice. But just listen to this. Just listen to this. The worst screen couple is any two cast members from Jersey Shore, the Three Stooges. So yeah, and again, this is another place where Twilight Saga features twice. So they have there's 10 awards altogether, and they have something like 14 nominations.
Has anybody here actually seen anything in the Twilight Saga?
No.
We're all out of the demographic, aren't we? Are we too old?
I think so.
We're about 3 times the age.
To the power of 3.
Actually, there's a great discussion. If any of you have seen the movie Liberal Arts, it's quite lovely. But part of the whole movie is, the absolute snobbery of the main character who's refusing to read this very popular vampire novel.
Oh, actually, just speaking of misogyny, I want to tell you the name of the David Hasselhoff movie that's being nominated. David Hasselhoff himself was nominated as the worst supporting actor, but the name of the movie is Piranha 3DD.
Wait, Piranha 3DD.
Double D.
Is that prawn? Is it porn?
I don't think it is.
No, it's not. It's just B grade kind of gratuitous.
It's double B grade. It's double B grade. Double B grade. Oh dear. On that interesting note, I'd like to thank everybody for coming back to the Think Tank. It's been a while.
I know, we should do it more often.
Let's do it more often. It's a wonderful thing, and I hope the listeners enjoy hearing our...
I'd like to make 2013 a anti-vaxxer free year.
I'll drink to that. Yeah. So to everybody, to Dianne, to Dr Rachie, to Eran, and to Joe, cheers from the Think Tank.
Cheers.
Thanks, Richard.
Oh, that cheap champagne.
It's wine.
Last year, Houston cancer quack Stanislaw Baczynski made headlines around the world when someone he had hired issued legal threats to bloggers who called him out for charging patients hundreds of thousands of dollars to enroll in so-called clinical trials for over 35 years. This year, the Skeptics for the Protection of Cancer Patients is raising funds for St. Jude Children's Research Hospital. We want to raise at least $30,000, the cost of enrolling in one of Baczynski's trials. On his 70th birthday, January the 23rd, we're going to issue a challenge to the Baczynski Clinic to match the total funds raised by skeptics and supporters of good science. Visit thehoustoncancerquack.com and give until it hurts. His bottom line.
Thank you for listening to the Skeptic Zone. Coming up in the next couple of weeks, more interviews with very prominent skeptics from Maynard, of course, at his time at the Australian Skeptics National Convention in Melbourne, and we're still raving about it. What a great time it was. Again, congratulations to the Melbourne people for such a wonderful convention. And there'll be more Dr Rachie reports. You might twist the arm of Eran, Segev and Joe Benhamu for some more segments, who knows. Maybe Penny Chan can chip in, or even Travis Roy all the way over there on the east coast of the United States. And before I go, another thank you to those wonderful people who chip into the Skeptic Zone to make sure we can keep it going, keep it on the air, so to speak. We're starting to eye off Las Vegas, folks. We're starting to think about what we can do. Who can we send to Las Vegas to get more interviews for your listening pleasure? Well, we'll see. But for now, this is Richard Saunders signing off from Sydney, Australia.
You've been listening to The Skeptic Zone. Visit our website at www.skepticzone.tv for comments, contacts, and extra video reports.